Why is there such an obsession with this idea that a chubby baby is a healthy baby?
There are grandparents and parents who want a chubby baby.
One or two mistakes you notice that a lot of parents are making.
An obsession with milk. You cannot bottle feed your child post 1 year of age.
What do we actually need to look out for in the first year to know that our child is growing well?
So basically,
is it okay to give babies medicines like for cold, cough? Is there one parenting myth you feel that parents need to get out of their head?
So if your pediatrician is not worried, please do not worry. There is a notion and an association of screen and food. It goes on to teenage and adulthood where every time they see a screen, get hungry. Give your child the liberty to grow, respect their preferences.
Hey parents, welcome to another episode of the Modern Indian Parent Podcast, a podcast that is redefining parenting in Indian families. I'm Sanchita Daswani, a pediatric nutritionist. Now, as a parent, that one person who we see a lot, we rely on a lot, and we have a lot of questions for is our pediatrician. Now, when it comes to our pediatrician, we have so many questions because as a parent, we want to make sure that our child is growing at the right pace, that they're safe, that they're healthy, that they're getting the nourishment that they need. Today, we are very lucky because on the podcast, we have with us Dr. Nihar. He is a renowned pediatrician with over 15 years of experience. His practice is based in India, but he's helped parents all around the world when it comes to baby and child care. Dr. Nihar Parekh is not only a pediatrician, but he's also an entrepreneur and innovator. And his focus has really been to change the path of pediatrics to not only focus on the textbook approach, but also on evidence-based practice. Today, Dr. Nihar is going to be sharing his expertise on so many of these hot topics that we have as parents regarding our child's height, their weight, what to do when they fall sick, when to be concerned as a parent, and the top tips that we need to keep in mind as parents when we are raising our kids. So let's welcome Dr. Nihar Parekh to the podcast. Hey, Dr. Nihar, thank you so much for being here today and being on the Modern Indian Parent Podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, Sanchita, I'm fine. It's a pleasure always to chat with you. And since we've done a few before, it's very comfortable. And I think it's always to get a different perspective from another specialist, put our two wits together and see what we can tell our young listeners, our parents, and benefit and change their lives. So super excited.
Yeah, we've been in touch for the last few years. My kids have come to see you as well when I was in India. And I just want to say that I really appreciate the way you do your work, because I know today as parents, it's such an overwhelming experience, overload of info. But I know whenever I chat with you or whenever I come see you, I just feel at ease. And I just want to, have a shout out to you for really making the journey much easier for parents, because a lot of times we're always stressed out about everything, which I'm sure you've experienced.
No, so just adding to that, and thank you very much for your kind words. Adding to that, as I've grown in my practice, I've realized that being a parent is one of the toughest things. And since, in the last 10 years, post-COVID, if you see, last 5 years, because of this information overload, post-COVID, there are a lot of anxious parents. There are a lot of parents who rely so much on information. Some of it is valid, some of it that is not. And then there is sharing of information, and it's a little bit of a mess, which eventually ends up in the child suffering because the parent is kind of lost on what's the right thing to do.
Correct. And the reason we have you here today on the podcast is because I know so many parents, they come see the pediatrician, they have the list of questions, and when they leave, they're like, I forgot to ask this. And so we have you here for some time to really clarify a lot of questions. So the first topic I want to get to, which is huge, especially in India and especially amongst Indians, is the weight and the height of a baby. So my first question for you, doctor, is why is there such an obsession with this idea that a chubby baby is a healthy baby?
So I think, Sanchita, it's a great point, and it's the joint families sometimes, or when the young parents are visiting their grandparents, and the first thing, even my children, even when we go out and we're meeting elderly people, the first comment is always about the weight. You put on so much weight. Oh, you've lost so much weight. Aren't you eating? Were you sick? So there's a lot of obsession with the physicality. And that trickles down to children as well, which is not that good. Now, what happens is because years and years of comparisons to a standard image of this little picture of a baby on a Parley biscuit or a little picture of a baby on a TV ad where that becomes the quintessential perfect baby. And that is what is percolated down from generations. And still there are grandparents and eventually parents who want a chubby baby. The second thing is the comparison. So every time parents of the same age meet and they have children approximately of the same age, the first comparison is on the physicalities, the appearances. And hence, whether it's an open conversation or no, there are always few taunts here and taunts there. So there are two things here. That's a two-pronged approach. Number one, parent shaming needs to stop. And number two is the pediatrician who needs to install tremendous amount of confidence in every parent that their child is normal.
Yeah, that's so true because even for my twins, they were born early. So they were born 2 months early. And of course, I knew that they will be a bit different. They will take time to gain that weight. And I remember that even though I know all of this, as parents, we still worry. But that is when you came in. That's when I spoke to you and you said you have to give them time. And also another thing which you also said is genetics play a huge role because I was lean and tall growing up, even my husband. So it is okay. But you're right. As parents, we do see, like, I see my kids with their friends and I'm like, oh, everyone's taller. Oh, everyone's a bit more, like, a little bit more chubby in that way. But then it's both the doctor and us that we really need to gain that confidence that it's okay. So doctor, can you tell us then, what do we actually need to look out for in the first year to know that our child is growing well?
So basically, it's a very standard protocol. Now, this is, I'm sure your listeners are from different parts of the world, but overall, with Indian genetics, our babies are very, very petite at birth. That's why the average birth weight is between 2.5 and 3 kilos. Now, if you go put them on charts internationally, they're going to be below the fifth, and the parents are going to be told you have an underweight baby and all. But as Indian origin, you have to remember that between 2.5 and 3 kilos at birth is normal. Number two, you do expect tripling of birth weight at 1 year. So 7.5 to 9 kilos is a normally expected average weight at 1 year of age. Some people are obsessed with double digits where we want 10 kilos at 1 year, which is not that easy because post 1 year, the kids only put a kilo to kilo and a half a year. So you can have a 2-year-old with a 10 kilo weight, which is absolutely normal. Here, what comes into play is also their milestones, whether they're, sitting on time, they're standing on time, they're running on time, they're holding their head, neck early on in the days. So all these things are on calendar periods. You don't have to worry about the weight. And the magic about weight after 1 year of age, it still continues to go up or is expected to go up only a kilo and a half per year. So we have kids at 5 years with 15 kilos, who are way more healthier than kids who are 20 kilos at 5 years, because weight technically does not have to do much with the overall immunity or health. Yes, if they are underweight, if they are falling sick, if they have nutritional deficiencies, that needs to be addressed. But overall, these are the normal benchmarks. So you need not worry about that scale not moving. We get so many parents, doc, we came to you 6 months ago, only 200 grams. So number one, they have come in when the child was 6. The child's already lost the 200 grams. And half a kilo in 6 months is an expected weight gain. So they're doing well.
Yeah, and exactly what you said. I like using it as double the birth weight by around 6 months, triple by around 1 year of age. And that is not based on it's based on their original birth weight. So every baby can have a different birth weight. If they're multiplying in the right way, they are growing in the right way. So that way, it's not like we have to compare. You base on your baby where they started. That makes sense. And as you said, the milestones, that's so important because they're getting the skills they need to thrive in life. So weight we've spoken about. Now this height thing, because I know I came to you and I was like, what's happening? Because my kids are a bit short. And from what my understanding is that genetics play a huge role in terms of height. So can you clarify for us, if we feel our kids are shorter than other kids,
Correct.
is this related to nutrition or to something else? Can we do anything about it?
So height up to 5 years. So again, there are certain what we call as benchmarks or milestones we need, and then below that, beyond a certain age, we need to investigate for medical causes of short stature. So basically, if we start at is every child is born around about 50 centimeters at birth, 50 to 52. They usually go to 75 by 1, to 84 by 2, 90 to 92 by 3, and 100 by 4 is a good benchmark. Usually at 5, we have 105, and by 10 years, they reach 125 centimeters. Now, these first 5 years are truly reigned by genetics. They're truly reigned by genetics. And not genetics of parents who are tall now, but how they were born. So, a lot of parents have the concern that we're so tall now. How can my child be short? So, if you ask them, why didn't you go ask your mother how you were when you were a child? They say, yeah, for the longest time, I was one of the shortest kids in class. So genetics then of you as a child is exactly how your child is going to be now. The biggest growth spurts come between 5 and 7 and then prepubertal. So that's when the exponential growth spurt happens. Now, all these parents thinking of certain medications for increasing height, certain exercises for these are not of groundbreaking or change making things that you want to do for your child. Because if you're supplementing them regularly with vitamin D, if you're giving them a good, healthy diet, if they're active children, you don't need to worry about height. Now, if your child is in the first 3 shortest of the class, and when you go to your pediatrician, and your pediatrician feels that the height is not matching the charts or is falling below the 5th of the numbers we discussed right now, then just for clarification that there is no underlying what we call as medical cause of short stature, they may ask for a simple x-ray of the left wrist, which is going to give us the bone age. Now, if the bone age on the x-ray is within 1 to 1.5 years of the actual age of the child, like for example, at 5 years of age, if your child is 102 centimeters, and when we expect them to be at least 105 being our cutoff, then I would get an x-ray done. Now, if the bone age of the x-ray shows approximately 3.5 to 4 years, which is well within the 1.5 year range of 5 years, there is no medical issue. And then there is the wait and watch game.
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to height again, so even for my kids, my husband told me the same thing. He said I was the shortest in the class, and suddenly at 13, I just shot up. So I said that makes sense now, because we don't want to just make all these assumptions and panic. So my question now is, suppose as you mentioned, you can do for the height, do an x-ray to have that knowledge. Now, what if your child is underweight? What if your child is just not reaching that height even post 5 years of age? What do you suggest parents do about that?
So, like I said, there is a certain approach to it. The approach is first to screen, and the screening is the x-ray. Once the x-ray shows that it's not medically concerning, then it's just wait and watch. We can focus very strongly on nutrition, where certain elements like protein, certain missing micronutrition can be there around to help overall spurt or fill in those gaps in the nutrition which are preventing certain things. If the short stature comes in a medically concerning approach, there are blood tests, there are certain references we can make. There are excellent pediatric endocrinologists now that do growth hormone stimulation tests to check if there is a deficiency. And then now there are options of growth hormone. If there are, let me repeat and be very clear, only if it's medically related short stature. In these cases, from our experience, we've seen that most of these kids who are short at 4 and 5, below the 5th, were actually born at a very small weight. They were small for gestational age. So kids born at 2 kilos, 2.1 kilos, not growing in the first 3, 4, 5 years, x-ray of the left wrist showing a bone age gap of more than 2 years is a perfect candidate to consider growth hormone therapy. Growth hormone therapy is administered by a pediatric endocrinologist. It has shown good results. So far, the safety norms have been phenomenal. So it is a valid option to consider. But again, it's an individual decision. It's not going to hamper, it's not going to change the genetics of the child. So it's only going to give it a kickstart. So if the parents are really disturbed and they feel that the child at 6 and 7 is really mentally getting bothered by the short stature, and there's something that can be done about it, they do have the right and they should have the option to consider this reference.
Sure. I think when we think of growth hormone, we get a bit nervous because we're like, it's playing with, our kids and all of that. But I appreciate what you said, that only if it's really necessary, if the reports are showing that there's a real stunt in growth, and if it's also affecting the child. And I remember I was discussing this with my friend whose son is very short, but we were also just joking around. We're like, short people can also be successful, they can do well in life in that way. So we are
Absolutely.
just obsessed as parents.
Yes,
And
yes.
one thing I also, as you mentioned about nutrition, so as a child nutritionist, I want to say that I've noticed with a lot of my clients, if the weight is a bit slow, one of the biggest things is because they're low on vitamin D or iron. So it's also just filling that nutritional gap. And as much as we want to try and do it with food, sometimes that push, which I did for my kids as well when I was with you this last month, adding that iron and vitamin D, it's okay, it's fine, and it will give them that push they need. So a lot of times it's just these little gaps, right? These little missing pieces that can help them.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, sunlight is a big dearth across the world now. So the natural forming vitamin D doesn't exist. So sometimes they need the boosters.
Right. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about a lot of mistakes that parents make. So I know you're seeing so many parents in your clinic every day. So could you tell us one or two mistakes you notice that a lot of parents are making when it comes to their child's health?
So I think obsession with milk is something that every parent now needs to. I mean, we're having parents much more aware now. A lot of parents are vegan, so they have strongly considered that option for their child as well. So let's break it down. Let's start with the strict no-nos. Number one, you cannot bottle feed your child post 1 year of age. Number two, if you ask me which is the healthiest milk for the child, I would say besides mother's milk, there is no other milk that is healthy for the child. I'm a bigger fan of lesser the milk after 1 year of age. I'm a bigger fan of milk products. Cow milk products, fine. Paneer, cheese, curd, buttermilk, those are good. A lot of parents get obsessed with milk. Now, unfortunately, Asian genetics also come into play where lactose intolerance, mild to moderate, is very severe. It's significant. I would say around 30 to 35%, 1 out of 3 children do have a certain amount of lactose intolerance. So what happens in those children if they have excessive milk? The effect of the milk being consumed with bloating, belching, being a sense of being full all the time, prevents them from eating other food. And that's when the nutritional deficiencies start. Number two, it's an easy go-to for every parent as well. So if the child's not eating, the child likes milk, it's still considered as a healthy option. So then the child hates eating and then it's a battle for food and it's a big problem. So milk, number one. Number two, the very other common mistake that parents make is replacing food with snacks. And eventually, it's a hand in glove effect of trying to force your child. And when your child doesn't eat, you give in and give the option that they want. Now, sugary treats are a big no-no. And a lot of sugar in hidden forms do exist in even sugar-free foods. Sugar in hidden forms exist in, all natural ingredients products. So I always believe we should read the label. Parents don't read the label. I mean, they're very gullible. I understand why their concern for their child's nutrition is very high. A product that is highly marketed on Instagram doesn't make it absolutely suitable for your child. Widely marketed products consumed by other mothers who may not be telling you the truth or may have suited their child may not suit your child. Number one, stick to homemade foods. Number two, have at least proper breakfast, lunch. A child can skip a meal is not a problem. You need not panic. But at no cost should you replace food with junk. So, and especially sugary treats, because sugary treats are known to kill appetite for 5 to 6 hours. So these are things which are easier said than done. I mean, everyone's running a tight schedule. Parents have a gazillion things to do. But trust me, if you set 3 days apart of your life, train your child, the art of not force feeding, being patient, 10 to 15 minutes later, let them go, let the hunger build. When you decide, the pattern followed by a parent should be when to eat, the child will decide. What to eat, the parent will decide. So it's a very simple rule because that takes the forcing of the force feeding away of it. So what happens then is you're not time bound. Oh, breakfast, lunch, dinner. No. Give food to your child when your child is hungry. But what to eat, you will decide.
Yeah, I think also when it comes to milk and all these sugary treats. So when it comes to milk, I also just say that look, kids need a lot of calcium because they're growing, right? But what I explain to parents is that okay, you have milk, you have other options, but if you choose the other options, just make sure you're giving enough. So that's why I try and guide parents that this is how much is in yogurt, this is how much in ragi, so they can make that decision accordingly. And even with sugary treats, I say avoid as much as we can till 2, because until they really realize what it is, because we've seen how it affects their appetite and everything, right? So what about for medicines? So when you have someone coming into your clinic, at what point is it okay to give babies medicines like for cold, cough, all of that? Or do you say wait till 1 year, or are home remedies always better? When do we decide which one to give?
This is how it works. Primarily, before I go to that point, I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate you on the work that you're doing, because I have a lot of parents who come to you and they're extremely happy. And they're happy because you're approachable, because you discuss, because you consider their options. You're not very, dogmatic or strong headed about this is there, or it's not a cookie cutter meal plan. Congratulations, you've kind of understood the mindset of the mother, which is more important, because if you don't understand and you don't get through the crux of the mother's mindset, your diet will never be followed and the child will never benefit. So going back to your point, so we have a standard norm of if the child is not bothered by the cough or cold, you don't need to medicate. So if the child is sleeping okay, playing okay, if the child is not that irritable, not in any kind of pain, do all your home remedies. You don't need to medicate your child. Now, when the cough or the cold gets the better of the or the worst of the child, means the child is just lying down, finding it difficulty to breathe when they sleep, continuously coughing, vomiting, that's the time we can do medicate. Different kind of, let's say, tolerance towards a particular medicine or effect of the other medicine, to let the pediatrician decide of which cough syrup. Now, once you've been to a pediatrician for a common cough, you know most of the things. So you can, next time when your child is really suffering, start those basic meds. And when it comes to fever, you're okay not to visit the doctor for 2 days. Manage the fever. Fever management can start by just doing nothing. If it's 9900, letting them rest, giving plenty of liquids orally, cooling them down, giving a little tap water sponge will keep the fever at bay. But if it's a 101, 102, if it's causing chills, if the child is causing of severe pain or headache or body ache that comes with fever, there's no harm in giving paracetamol or ibuprofen as per your pediatrician's charts and as per the frequency and dosage as age appropriately required. So if you follow these things, you can be a very calm, cool, composed parent. If you panic, you will always do the worst for your child. If you're calm, trust me, things will fall into place. And the last statement that I give every parent, worried parent, is only worry if the pediatrician is worried. So if your pediatrician is not worried, please do not worry. So that's
Right.
how the approach will be. The calmer you stay, the easier it is.
And before 1 year of age, is it okay to give cough syrup and cold syrup?
These mucolytic drops help in relieving the congestion, and there are certain drops to give soothing effects. Drops can be given. Again, they are drops, so slightly more potent than the syrups. So getting the right dosage is very important.
Got it. And when it comes to supplements for babies under 1, do you recommend that all babies are on vitamin D and iron before 1 year of age, or does it actually matter based on breastfed, formula
So
fed, premature?
yeah, so I am okay, let's start with the premature ones. Premature ones we like, give the vitamin Ds, the calciums, the irons, or maybe a multivitamins, omegas, because you want to help them catch up, get used to what their full genetic potential. But in children born at a normal weight, I'm a bigger fan of only vitamin D. So if the mother is kind of breastfeeding, which we strongly encourage, if she's taking her calcium and iron as recommended by the gynecologist, then the only thing that the newborn needs is vitamin D. So technically that's good enough. And most of our formulas are also fortified. So check for fortification. If the formulas are fortified with iron and calcium, then again, vitamin D is good enough for the new. So iron is technically at 1 year, we have this norm of getting a CBC done. checking the hemoglobin levels, because iron is not a very easy mineral to vitamin to digest. There is a lot of gastritis in children, constipation, staining of teeth, hardening of gums. So these are things that only if required we do so.
Yeah. And when it comes to, for some reason, there seems to be, like, for iron, it's always something I've played around with, but from what I've noticed is that it's hard for some reason for Indians, because a lot of us are also vegetarian. Even a lot of us as adults are low in iron. So there is a rise of a lot of kids who seem to be anemic or low
Correct.
in iron. Do you think it's because of the
Correct.
diet, or it's just genetics, or?
So, yeah, the food quality is kind of what's taking a little. As kids grow, they're not getting enough iron from natural food. So, green leafy vegetables, vegetarians, they do, have a slight disadvantage. I feel that a quick fix diet is what's kind of killing the nutritional environment of the child, where because of the lack of time and sometimes because of lack of patience from the parent, if a healthy meal is not consumed, like I told you before, they're very quick to replace it with unhealthy foods. And then it becomes a big habit where the child keeps eating the unhealthy foods and parents are happy. Unhealthy foods can be at home as well. So unhealthy doesn't mean outside food. Don't get me wrong. A quick fix of a snack instead of a well-rounded diet, a quick fix of something fried and starchy as compared to something green leafy. So these are quick fixes that we make at home and still are not nutritionally the best. So I feel that the nutritional, like you rightly said, iron deficiencies are getting much more common between the age group of 5 and 8.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I was reading these statistics. It was saying that 1 in 10 obese children will be from India by 2030.
Yes.
So that is very alarming. And I think when both of us are, in our practice and we are learning about this, number one is, of course, a lot of extra snacks and sugary treats. Number two is these quick fix meals as well. Do you think there's anything else that's contributing to this obesity rise?
Yeah, yeah. Number one, I would put it as screen time. So screen time is basically a big, big issue where the kids, it's like when we were studying, and I put up actually a post on this, was that experiment done by Pavlov. I don't know if you remember when we studied in school, where he took a bell and there was a dog, the Pavlov's dog and bell experience. And every time he rang the bell and gave food to the dog, he kept doing it again and again. And after a 10-day period, he just rang the bell and didn't give the food. The dog, hearing the bell, had already formed a preconceived notion and association with the food and started salivating. So this is the same thing that happens because of our children being trained to eat in front of the screens because it's easier. They get to watch their screen and they're eating and the parents can finish the meal much better. There is a notion and an association of screen and food. So it goes on to teenage and adulthood where every time they see a screen or you and me see a screen, we get hungry. So every time there is a phone or you're seeing a cricket match or the child is 8 years of age and seeing a show or IPL is on, Mommy, I'm hungry. Mommy, I'm hungry. So that connect is what is now being genetically since the child was born. So, and that leads to 3 overfeeding or eating 3 times more than normal. And those parents say, but my child is so lean. So under puberty, when you give extra sugar, it turns into fat, which increases the number of fat cells, which may not be visually there. But the minute they get triggered by puberty, each fat cell increases in size. And that's when the obesity becomes visible. But through your initial years, till 6, 7, 8, all those extra calories are being stored as small, small fat cells. And you may think my child is lean. And the minute puberty hits, and they blow up. So instead of the muscles growing, the fat cells.
That's such an interesting description because so many of us are just, okay, it's okay, they're eating the biscuit, they're getting those calories, it's fine. It's okay. And look, they still look skinny. And you're so right. It shows up much later in life. And forget all of that. I mean, end of the day, this whole idea of force feeding, so many of us have grown up this way. And so many clients will come and tell me, or people say, who cares? Like, let our kids just eat on the screen because we turned out fine. And that's what the grandparents will say. Why are you doing this baby-led weaning? Just force feed. And the fact is, a lot of us are not fine. A lot of us are emotional eaters. A lot of us are addicted to screens and overeating. And a lot of us have autoimmune conditions and all, which have stemmed from the way we were eating. So we're not fine. And what I want to tell parents is that instead of force feeding, which is the easy way out, or doing screens, it's not that our kids can't eat. Every child can eat and fulfill their hunger needs. But instead of finding the easy way out, identify why. Why is your child throwing the food? Why are they screaming at the table? There is a reason. And if you get to that core root, you can actually help them have a better relationship with food.
Sanchita, they need to be patient for that. You're absolutely spot on. This doesn't happen overnight. You have to put in effort, you have to put in few days, you have to be patient. And it's, yeah. And every parent may say, yeah, it's easier said than done. And we agree. But compare it to just 3 days of discipline and lifelong of peace as against the battle every day. So if you are okay to put in that little bit of work for 3 days, that's all it takes.
And when we're talking about screen time, do you generally recommend, like, we know for sure eating and screens we want to avoid, but generally do you recommend, or have you seen that kids who are watching screens before the age of 5 or early has had negative impacts, or it's okay a little bit here?
So I frankly don't know of any child who's not seen screen under 5. So, that's a very idealistic. But what is medically recommended is zero screen under 2 years of age. From 2 to 5, try and limit it to less than between a 40-minute to and 1 hour period in a day. After 5, maybe an hour and a half to 2. But bigger screens are preferred than some smaller screens. Purposeful viewing of movies is preferred than pointless scrolling. So these are tips that we can offer. These are suggestions, recommendations, but every household dynamic is very different. Every parent's bringing up is very different. So we do empathize and sympathize with the parent. It's our job to tell you what's best for. And yes, I have seen children really suffer because of excessive screen time. Selective mutism, screen-induced autism, very poor social skills, excessive aggressiveness, hyperactivity. It's like cocaine for their brain. It gives so much gratification. And the withdrawal symptoms are terrible. I've had 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds hit their parents for not giving the screen. Going to the neighbor's house, stealing the phone just to get screen time. So these are horror stories we know of. But then, you know what? It's there, and we need to just make sure that it's done well within the normal range and limit the evil of it.
Yeah, I think, as you said, we have to understand that this is the reality today. If our parents had iPads when we were younger, I'm sure they would have given it to us as well. So it's about having certain boundaries, limitations, but of course, it's okay. They can watch a bit of TV here and there and just try not to overdo it, because we get it. We have to be realistic. So I want to ask you back to screen time and getting to this. And as you mentioned, that a lot of these effects are happening. So many kids now have sensory issues. They will not touch the broccoli. They will not play in the sand. They don't like water. They don't like anything on their face. Why is these sensory processing disorders issues so common now?
See, SPDs have become common because of restrictive living. So what has happened is, as the kids grew up, maybe COVID or pre-COVID or post-COVID, there were a lot of things you can't touch. You can't do this. You can't do that. You don't hold that. Put it down. So they were never given the liberty to explore like we were given. So they passed a certain time phase where there were things that they've never experienced sensorily. And suddenly one fine day, they've been put across to it. And for them, it's very foreign. And they don't appreciate it. So what happens is, because of over usage of texture, just pureed foods. Normally pureed food should stop by 9 to 9.5 to 10 months. I have 1.5 and 2-year-olds on pureed foods. Again, because of the parents not having the time or patience to give them that and then wait peacefully. 2 bites, the child chokes and throws out, and the parent immediately mashes the food and makes. So the child, how we grew up is we experienced all of it the same way they are, and we didn't like it initially, but there was no choice given. So we automatically got systemically desensitized. They never are getting that, because if they don't do it, parents stop. And then it leads to this one fine day where there's a sudden bombardment of environmental stimulus and they can't handle it. Yes, SPDs as lone factors do exist, but they are underlying factors as part of deeper issues as well. Like children on the spectrum have early manifestations or exaggerated manifestations of SPD. Kids who are little ADHD can have SPD. So once a child has SPD, the pediatrician should dig a little deeper to look for these things. But otherwise, I feel SPDs are things you don't need to kind of dig too deep about, and just keep doing what you're doing and eventually will fall into place. I'm a little fan of tough love, where don't give a lot of options, where this is it, this is what it is, take your time with it, but things are not going to change that easily. So I'm going to lay the law of the land in the house, be nice about it. I'm not going to enforce it, but that's how it's going to be. There are other ways of doing it, where SPDs are, systemically desensitized, where you give a little, that works too, but that also requires a lot of patience.
Yeah, and what I've learned with working with so many kids is it's not what your child does, it's how you respond as a parent. And I tell parents this, I said, it's how you respond at meal times is going to determine whether your child is a picky eater or not. And I'm not blaming anyone because I did it. My kids became picky eaters because I had so many expectations of what my kids need to do. We all are there, we've all done it, but just take a step back and just put yourself in your child's position and be patient with them. And yeah, so to wrap it up, I have two last questions for you. The first one is there one parenting myth you feel that parents need to get out of their head? I know you mentioned there was milk and all of that. Is there anything else you want to say that you wish this myth would just disappear?
So I believe the comparison needs to stop. So all parents need to stop comparing their child to either themselves when they were children, as explained by the grandparents, or other children around them. I again repeat that it's very difficult to do, because there is constant bombardment of factors where one child is doing this and the other. Peer pressure builds up way high. Expectations from the society of multiple classes. Your child has to be good in sports, good in school, good in social agenda, should be the star of the party, should be the biggest, healthiest. There's so many expectations around a child created by the parent, and the root cause of it is comparison. So if a parent stops comparing even their child with themselves, your child is genetically yours, but socially not yours, environmentally not yours, because what exposure you had socially and environmentally is way different from what your child is going through. So yes, genetic is there, but give your child the liberty to grow, show their preferences, respect their preferences. And again, what you rightly said, a parent needs to change themselves before expecting their child to change. So the lot of dynamics here stemming from the parents. So if the parents are open-minded, don't compare, give their child the freedom to grow, it's going to significantly reduce the stress on them, and that's going to show on the child, who's going to be a much happier, healthier child.
That's lovely, and that's such a great way to end this talk. Thank you so much, Dr. Nihar. You've given us so much insights, and I know everyone who's going to watch this is going to feel at ease after listening to this. So thank you so much for your time and for being here today.
No problem, Sanchita. And congratulations once again on the brilliant work you're doing.
Thank you.